Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's RD to RD live show. Megan Boitano here, and we are joined today by Bri Bell. We're going to tackle the topic of SEO, and we're going to do things a little bit differently because if you're like me, you know how important SEO is. You've read countless blog posts. You might have, dabbled in, trying to do a better job with your keyword research, but it's a lot and it can feel really overwhelming because that's how I feel about SEO most days. But I think why I wanted Bri to come on and do it this format with kind of an audit is really to take a lot of what we already know about SEO and try to apply it in a real world situation to an actual website so you can start to take what you know about SEO and start to apply it. So we're going to talk about a little bit of principles and information, but really going to focus on some application here. So Bri put together a fabulous free site checklist. I dropped a link to that in the comments for this video. So if you haven't already grabbed that, you'll definitely want to get your hands on that download. You don't have to click away right now. We're going to be walking through, but you want to make sure you get your hands on that. Okay. So I'm going to try something a little bit different today. I have a couple of polls set up in Facebook, and I'm not always sure how to release these polls. So I'm going to let Bri introduce herself. And while she's doing that, I'm going to figure out how I can deliver these polls to you guys so you can answer them. All right. So Bri, why don't you give us a little bit about your background as a dietitian and how you became kind of a self-proclaimed SEO nerd, if we want to say that.
Sure. Yeah. So as a dietitian, my first job was working at a public health organization called Nutrition Australia. So I was in Australia. And as part of that, I did a little bit of their SEO. Like I did some Twitter and Facebook group stuff. And then going forward through different jobs, I had little bits of my role were based on doing the social media and stuff like that. And I did a little bit of SEO, what I thought was SEO at the time, like, oh, you should include a keyword in your post, or you should list your business on Google businesses. So those basic things. So anyway, fast forward to a few years ago, I moved to Toronto and I was kind of just like looking for a part-time job. I actually started being a fitness instructor for a mermaid swimming company, which is super random, but who doesn't love mermaids, right? So this convoluted story starts where that company was actually hiring a digital marketing manager. And I was like, well, I took a marketing class. I already know about the company. Like I worked here for a few months, so I applied. And then she was just like so excited to have me. And she trained me about SEO. So that I was like, yeah, I know about SEO. I did it for these things. And she's like, oh, great. And then she was like, okay, do this now. And I was like, can you help me with that? Because that is a different part of SEO than I didn't know. So that was about 3 years ago. And since then I've been doing their SEO. I've done SEO for my own site and I've helped over 30 dietitians with their SEO as well. So I'm excited to help you guys too.
Yeah, great story. I always think it's interesting how our unique background, whatever that is, there's always a reason why we are where we are. And I think our strengths, sometimes listening to what we're good at and the opportunities that are presented, we end up where we're supposed to be, right?
Yeah, I love the randomness kind of.
Yeah,
You never
yeah.
know how it's gonna like go. Like you have this vision and for
Mm-mm.
where you're gonna end up, but when you look back, you're like, okay, it makes sense now. But
Yeah,
at the time, you're like, what?
yeah. No, I feel the same way often about my own technology background, not really seeing all of those pieces fit together until, you know, now, being helping do a diet order entry system from paper to manual just out of my internship, like every experience I've had over my career, that natural affinity you have for certain things and certain skills, it really starts to, come together. I think when you're early on in your career, they might seem very divergent, right? They're all these randomness, but eventually they kind of collectively come together and you say, oh, it was all preparing me for this. Not being a rather new dietitian, I feel that way.
Yeah, totally.
So let's kind of, before we really get into the nuts and bolts, and I can't figure out how to release my poll questions on Facebook, so we're just gonna skip that. I was really excited to kick them out there, but I'll try again next time. So let's talk briefly about SEO for websites for dietitians, and then maybe contrast this whole idea of your website versus individual posts and pages. Are they the same? Are they different? Let's kind of start breaking this down a little bit.
Sure. So SEO is for your whole website and for individual pages and individual posts. Like if you have a blog post, the SEO is for its own like post, but also it relates to the SEO of the whole site. So with the site audit that we're going to do, we're going to touch briefly on all the 4 different areas. So that's you can have site-wide SEO, you can have on-page SEO, off-page SEO, and then the keywords that you were mentioning before. That's a really important one. I feel like most people know about keywords, and from there, I think that a lot of it isn't well known.
Right. So if we
as
get back to
much.
the whole idea of search engine optimization, the whole goal is to get found, right? And create our
Yes.
content or build our, our website in a way that allows us to get found, right? And I think many of us know, yeah, I want to, being found, the whole idea of, you know, being findable by Google, right? We might talk about keywords. So we're going to break that down today and do like an actual audit and say, are you really ranking? I mean, what do keywords mean? What does that actually look like when you take a website and you apply these, these pillars of SEO?
Yeah, and it's super interesting because like you could have the perfect keyword that is really easy to rank for and you used it perfectly, but if you did none of the other SEO aspects, you actually probably are not going to rank.
Hmm.
But the cool thing about it for dietitians is that people are searching like millions, billions probably of searches every month for nutrition topics. And Google wants to show credible sources of information. So with our credentials, we already have a leg up from all the other like random bloggers and people out there who just write about nutrition from their own experience. So that's one aspect of SEO that we already have in the bag.
Yeah, I mean, our experience certainly does
Hmm.
make us more credible than others. But you
Yeah.
mentioned having kind of the perfect keyword, but maybe not getting found. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about that concept of, I guess if you're trying to get found for your services, right? I want to be found for a dietitian near me or a dietitian in Boston or pediatric diet, whatever it is that you want to get found for versus, let's say, a topic related to, you know, um, pregnancy nutrition or
Hmm.
fueling, how are those two different and what does that mean from a SEO angle?
Yeah. So if you are trying to be found like locally, um, it's super important to have your website listed in like business listings and Google and Bing and Yahoo, all those business listings online. Because when people search, whatever, dietitian in Boston, um, you want yours to show up on the first page, right? There's lots of dietitians in Boston, I'm sure, but that you're not going to show up if you're not listed in those places that are always on the first page of Google when people search for location things. There's also going to be like local um, forums, or like not forums, but like
Mm-hmm.
local business listings. It's also good to get mentioned by local media and get links from those kind of sources. Um, so those are some things that you would definitely want to do for local SEO. But also, I think it's really important to not limit ourselves to local. Like, I guess if your business was literally just seeing people in your physical office, then that might be your only focus. But I feel like there's a lot of power. Like if you had any kind of online resources, like an ebook or like courses or something like that, you definitely want to be leveraging the whole country or even worldwide.
Absolutely.
So
So
with
for you,
that, you would be like choosing
yeah.
or like writing about different topics specific to your niche. So
Mhm.
pregnancy nutrition, you're going to be writing blog posts about that or putting out content on your website about that and using those kinds of keywords to bring in those people who are searching for those things.
Right. So if we're kind of narrowing into dietitian bloggers, let's say, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's really confusing, right? Because sometimes we'll say I'm a blogger when we might, or let's say if you're a blogger and your sole goal is to monetize your website and you're not going to see clients at all, there are dietitians that see clients and still blog. So I think this
Mm-hmm.
term, like dietitian blogger, all of us picture something completely different. Okay, like what is a dietitian blogger in your mind? Um, Maybe kind of talk a little bit about you were talking about local listings, shifting that over into this whole idea of optimizing your blogging efforts around getting found.
Yeah, for sure. So honestly, I think both of the types of people that you listed would be considered dietitian bloggers because they're both blogging, but their end goal is going to be different. Like one is to convert people who come to their site into clients that they see one-on-one. It could be virtual or whatever. And the other one, they might do that as well, but they're also trying to diversify their income. So they could have courses, they could have um, like physical products, like people sell t-shirts, like whatever other kinds of income besides just one-on-one or like group courses or something like that,
Yeah.
where they're seeing clients. So I think both of those types of businesses can, or I shouldn't say can, they will benefit from SEO, what we're going to talk about.
So let's kind of do what our goal is today. So the whole idea of looking at your website and going through and auditing it, because many of us, let's say, have a website, but maybe when we started, I feel like this is a broken record, right? Everyone starts out and then goes, "Oh, wow, I really need to get my act together with SEO." I didn't. When I was first started blogging, I was just writing about whatever, just creating recipes that sounded interesting. That now going back to say, how is my website performing and how do I prioritize my efforts? Because no one can do everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where are my biggest opportunities? Where am I doing well? What's the kind of content that is performing well that I should be doing more of? And what are my biggest priority items? So let's kind of talk about this idea of how to approach auditing your website to see, what you need to be working on.
Yeah, so that's why I made that checklist. So it's a freebie that's on the RD to RD store. Um, there's, like you mentioned, SEO can be a little bit overwhelming. It's not really hard, so don't get scared or anything, but there are lots of pieces to it. So I made the checklist that kind of goes over the main things that you would want to look for. Some of it is one-time things like making sure your website is secure, stuff like that. That's stuff like that are like Google says this is a ranking factor. If you don't do this, you will not show up. So that is like super important, but it's like a one-time thing, and then you don't have to really look up on it again. But then other things like how you're ranking and stuff, you would want to look back on periodically and see, oh, can I do better? Blah, blah, blah. So some of it you're gonna do one time, other things you're just gonna want to revisit.
Because I can see here on your first page, like the tech stuff of a broken link checker. And I can tell you,
Mm-hmm.
I've never checked my site for broken links, and I'm honestly terrified to see what I would find if I did that. But it's important, right? And definitely
Yeah,
something I should be prioritizing as someone who has a website. So those are
yeah.
just
I mean,
little things that you could look at.
yeah, exactly. And you don't have to do it all at once because it could be a little bit overwhelming. If you find something that needs to be fixed, then it might take some
Right.
time to fix it, right? So with broken links, if you find broken links, you want to be like either linking to the appropriate place or redirect the link so that it goes to the right place
Right.
if it's between pages on your site.
Yeah.
So Because as a user, you're like, oh, I want to read more about that. And then, oh, I can't find it. It's kind of frustrating. But Google is trying to make the results that they show most user friendly. So they're scanning your site and seeing for broken links. And if like, oh, there's lots of broken links on the site, they're not going to show it over. Yeah, exactly. They're not going to show it over some other similar site that doesn't have a bunch of broken links or whatever.
And I think you made a really good point about it, not making it overcomplicated and really focusing on, I just think of skills as a few little things and, being consistent, and then, building on maybe what are the 5 things that I'm really going to command this week or this month. Otherwise, it's overwhelming, right? It's too much. So I'm going to do the first few things on the checklist. So everyone, I'm a little bit terrified because Bri's going to use my website as an example and air my SEO dirty laundry. No, live here on the show, but use it as an example of kind of where we have opportunity and how you would go through and say, here's what's going well, maybe here's not going well with your website. So how you can use her resource, as well as, she offers, she helps other dietitians with SEO. So she's kind of give you a little sneak peek into what that might look like. So Bri, let's kind of talk about this kind of process. Maybe if you were guiding somebody through how to jump into the audit process.
I would just say start somewhere. Like if you're the person who likes to do things in order, just do it in order. If you're like, this looks interesting, that works too. Because it's a checklist, you can check it off. I'm kind of a non-linear person, so as we go through, it might not be in exact order. So just heads up about that, but that's okay. Because like I said, it's pretty easy to go through and do one at a time.
Yeah, so maybe do you want me to let you kind of take it away? Do you want to go ahead and do a screen share? What are you feeling now?
Yeah, let's do a screen share. Okay. I think it's super helpful for all the visual learners out there. So yeah, let's do that.
Absolutely. I will.
See.
All right.
Okay, can you see my screen?
I can see your screen.
Perfect. Okay, so here's the checklist that we were talking about. I'm just going to quickly scroll down a little bit, down to the main part. So you can see I put a date here. You can list the date that you want to, or that you're doing this audit. And then say if you're super organized and you have like a business binder, you can print it off and then just have a section for these, and you can go back and see what you did before. I think that would be a really useful way to do that. So let's go through this tech stuff. It's not too scary, even though it's about tech, okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, so the first one is secure site. Basically, all that means is that you have this HTTPS. So lots of sites used to have it as HTTP, but now it's very, very important to have the S there, which is part of the security.
Right. Is there a difference in different types of SSL certificates? Because most of the time, your hosting provider might offer one for free. I actually use an extended validation SSL certificate just so that I can have like a green address bar and whatnot.
Oh, I don't know about that. I didn't know there was a difference, but yeah. I just have the free one for my host, and it's good. So that's all you really need.
Okay.
But maybe with your website, it has a lot more personal information on it. So I think you would be wise to take a step up on extra security. But for an average website that they're just maybe collecting someone's email address or whatever, this will be fine. So you just click on your URL on your site, and then you can see, oh, it has it. Perfect. So that's good.
And you can always view the certificate if you want to, but right.
Yeah. Just the easy way to look at it. Okay, so now the next one is site speed. So Google, all these are like specific ranking factors that Google says, like if your site is not secure, if your site is really slow, or blah, 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 if it's not mobile friendly, you will lose ranking. So these are important things to look for. So this link I just opened up right here. Okay, so we can see on desktop, you get a 65. So it's not perfect. It could be a bit better. When you scroll down, it kind of tells you what okay, there's a lot of stuff here and I don't know what it all means, but some of it is like pretty like clear, like properly sized images. So it's saying if you resize some images to like I know when I uploaded resources to your store, it said the cover image is supposed to be about this size. So if someone uploaded it way bigger, that is one instance where it would potentially slow down the site. So
well, this is super interesting information.
yes. So anyone can look on their own, or I mean, you could look up any website you want. So it's saying you could save about 0.44 seconds if the images were resized. If you have a web developer, obviously this would be a good thing to get them to work on.
I do, and I'm making a note.
Like this is another thing about image sizes. So where it's about the format, but that's basically about the file size, I guess, would be to explain it. Yeah. So anyway, you can check on there, and then it's also good to look on mobile because with maybe not RD to
half
RD,
of my
but
traffic is mobile.
Oh, really? Yeah, I was gonna say like on a standard website, it's usually like very high, like 60 or 70%. So you can check on that. So looks like your mobile one is a little bit slow too. So that could be something to look
and
into.
I've noticed I have a pretty active firewall on my site, which sometimes can really hurt my speed. So those are some things I've been looking at, but side notes.
Yes, for sure. So that's one thing for your list. And if you were doing this on your own, you could just stop there and be like, hey, I really need to work on the site speed. And then you can check that again in a week or whatever after you made some changes and then see it improve. So I think another important thing, like I have my website on WordPress.org. So it's self-hosted. And on there you can get plugins that helps, like caching plugins and lazy load or something. I don't know all the plugin names, but there's different ones that you can get that make your website speed up.
Correct.
So those are pretty helpful.
But I think knowing where you are and then, incrementally starting to investigate. And I think really learning what you need as you go. I think there's this whole idea of really just trying to learn every possible thing about SEO and then get started. And I'm really, in my personal experience, have found it to be better to learn in chunks, like learn, apply, absorb, develop a little bit of mastery, and then learn, absorb. One, it's a whole lot less overwhelming. And two, you actually start taking action because you're probably not going to break your site by doing what are the image formats that I have? Like, how could what is one specific plugin, even though maybe it's a teeny minuscule little thing, but those tiny little actions over the course of weeks, days, months do make a difference versus continuing to learn about SEO until you feel like you know enough that you might start taking little bits of action. So,
yes, I totally agree with that. And like, that's kind of why I love SEO because it's not like this huge like mountain that you have to climb and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you see the sunlight, out of the valley. It's like each step counts towards it. And that's one thing that I mentioned in my other products that I have on your store, that it's kind of like if you do like one thing for SEO, it's not going to like make you instantly rank. But if you do multiple things, that's your best chance. So like I said before about the keywords, if you have the perfect keyword, you could still not rank if your site's too slow or if you don't have any backlinks, stuff like that. So let's keep moving on and see about mobile friendliness. Okay, so just so you know, I basically just preloaded these things.
Okay.
So don't think it's like really confusing if anybody's not following quietly. But so it looks like it's mobile friendly. And then I think if it said other things, you can see some more information about it. It does say there's some loading issues. So to be honest, I don't know what that means, but that looks confusing. But it says that it's mobile friendly. So overall, I would say that's a pass. Okay, so now let's go to your website. So we're going to look at the navigation. Is it clear how to find information? Can they find out how to contact you? What is your site about? All that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to do a little freestyle here. I'll bring you down over here. Okay, so this is the home page. Quality resources from nutrition experts. That's good. That like tells me right away what the site is about, and then you can start searching. So that's great. Then down here, it looks like there's more information. So we have product types, topics, free resources. Okay, so this is for like people who have their own account.
And then your shopping cart, which is probably different than most people's websites. So, right, might be a little different.
Yes, that's true, because this is more like business to business.
Yeah,
and
it's
whatever.
A commerce website. So yeah, I don't know.
But it works for what you're doing, right? So, and that's what's important. That's why it's not like a specific list of things to have in your bar, whatever this is called. I think it was
interesting. I, went out to hire a web developer when I redid my website, and some of the things in your menus being dynamic content. So for example, under the account, when somebody is logged in, there's different things that display, whether or not you just have an account or you're also a vendor. So it's also dynamic content, which I think making sure that you're not overwhelming with every single option, that it's a little bit in tune with the person and their interaction with the site too. So
totally. And like, I know some sites have like 2 rows of like options up here. You have a good amount, so that's good. And then it's kind of drop down. You can click on what you want. So this looks good. This one, it does seem to have quite a lot of things, but I mean, it would be good to look at your site navigation from the behind the scenes. Like, we're not going to look at that today, but that's something that you can look at and see, are people actually clicking through here, or are they finding things a different way? Because like, if people are not even using these, then maybe consider redoing that.
That's a good point.
Okay, so features, products, nice images.
Some of them.
Okay, so collections. Okay, so they're by sort of like another set of categories, basically, that are similar types. And then, okay, so then we can see that you have a bit of a blog here. And so these are blog posts for people who are vendors, basically, right? And that's like your main clientele, right? You're not like, are people like random people Googling like diabetes carb counting handout?
You'd be surprised. Some of my highest incoming traffic is from like the search term low potassium, which is really interesting because I have a lot of resources geared towards, that. So I'd say my blog, my blog
like
content is geared towards dietitians, but I tend to alternate between something that's maybe geared towards someone who might be selling and sometimes maybe buying. You can kind of see,
yeah, that's a bit more challenging. That requires some thinking for sure.
When you're building an online marketplace, like understanding what your website needs to do, I need to build both sides. So I have to build customers and I also have to build sellers. So creating content that serves both of those, sometimes overlapping audience and sometimes divergent, like 2 different audiences. Right. So
and like 2 different buyer groups as well.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose like people searching low potassium diet or whatever could also be dietitians, but they're not all going to be dietitians. They're probably like people.
Yeah, like I have grandmas who are buying a snack list for, soccer snacks because they take their grandson, to soccer games and things. So the website isn't limited just to dietitians. So anyone can buy. I think some people think that you have to be a dietitian. You don't. And many people aren't who shop on the site currently.
Yeah, that's good. That increases your earning potential for sure. And also the vendors too. If they're optimizing the SEO on their page for their product, those people can come and click right on their product because they found it in Google, right? So
correct.
That is a great way to get found. Okay, so you have a little about products. So, okay, here's contact. Okay, perfect. So I think this overall is pretty well laid out and stuff. So all the basics, like the contact, about, blah, blah, those kind of things. Let's see. Okay, and you have all your policies and legal information. That's great. I didn't know about that when I started blogging, and then people were like, "Oh, you have to have a privacy policy." And I was like, "How do you make a privacy policy?"
Right.
But there are ones that you can buy as a template online, so it's pretty easy. Or you could, if you really wanted to, you could get your lawyer to write you one up that would fully cover you. The ones online, who knows? But
Right.
I'm not recommending any specific ones. Okay, so let's quickly go into the URL. So basically, a good URL is your website name, and let's see from your articles, and the title of the post or the page or whatever. Okay, so this one's pretty descriptive.
Yeah.
It's a bit long, to be honest, but I like that it says the title and it has little dashes, so it's easy to read. You know what you're clicking on. If, say, someone searched something that came up in Google, they would know, okay, this is answering my question or this is not answering my question. You don't want to have like rd2rd.com /2018 /pages / I keep saying backsplash, but I mean backslash. You know what I mean? So
Which
all
is
those
an
extra things,
important
try
point
not to
with
have
the
those.
dates. Like I
Yes.
have another website on Squarespace, and blog posts kind of default to having like a date on them unless you change some settings. And I remember when I first started blogging on that website, I didn't realize not to have dates. So when I started publishing newer posts, I made sure to like not have that date in there.
Yeah, so if you have them in your website, you could just leave them. It's not ideal, but it's not going to like destroy your SEO by any means. It's just kind of unfortunate because as you're, someone comes to see it, it's like, oh, it's 2018, and then there's something else that's like newer. They're going to be like, this is old and it's not up to date. And you can't change the URL unless you like do a redirect. Otherwise, all your links are going to be broken. So it's a little bit more work. So if you're just starting your site, make sure you select that it does not have that setting.
Right.
So I would say overall your URL is not bad. It depends too on what keyword you're targeting. I'm assuming this is not a specific keyword because
No.
Yeah, it's just because you already have an audience, so you're writing for the audience that you have. It's not like something that you're trying to show up for in Google.
Correct. Some of my posts are, maybe trying from a SEO. Sometimes it's more of, people are, I don't know what to create like over and over and over again. I get the same question asked, so that in my onboarding sequence or things, I have the right resource to plug in, or I can direct people to kind of a workhorse, like this is where you can go to answer that question.
Yeah,
so
perfect. So you've already thought about the purpose of your post and it's serving the purpose that you wanted to. So if there are posts where you're like, okay, I'm talking about low potassium diet handouts, and then say it was like a post where you're like, oh, all the low potassium diet handouts on RD2RD, then in that one you would want it to say rd2rd.com /low potassium diet handouts. That would be your URL. So I think that's good. Okay. Oh, I'm going to skip the broken link checker because it's probably not as interesting.
Yeah, because I want to make sure we get into some of these other items as well.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so the next one is Google your brand name. How fun.
How often have I Googled myself? Never. I don't know.
Yeah, Google yourself. So RD2RD Marketplace. See what comes up. So we're seeing your actual website, your Facebook page, some other version of your Facebook page, your videos, Pinterest. Okay, this is awesome. So Google knows what your website is, and they're showing everything about you.
Cool.
And it's even saying searches related to RD2RD Marketplace, handouts for dietitians. So this is excellent. Google knows what your site is about. So.
Free stuff for dietitians. I like that.
So now that you see these this is a keyword tip. You can use these keywords throughout your site because people are searching for free stuff for dietitians. You can put it somewhere, like if you had a page, like I'm sure you have a page just for the freebies, right? So you can literally use that term. Lots of times, also it's good to see these site links in there. Sometimes it'll just show this little part right here, which is okay too, but these are like extra good, and that's each one's describing more about your site. And then for like your brand name is very specific, but if it was like, say like Rachel Nutrition or something, there's probably going to be like other similar sites. So those will probably show up along here. Or if it was like, I don't know, sportsnutritionspecialist.com or something. If you look up sports.
Really here you're wanting to make sure, does Google have a good idea of what your site is about? If you're seeing a bunch of stuff that really doesn't, what would you be wanting to do to better tell, like what do you do then?
Well, for the most part, like I guess it would depend on your site, because if it was say like sportsnutritionspecialist.com, if you Google sports nutrition specialist, it's going to show up a bunch of like other people, and hopefully your site also ranks. But so one thing that you want to do is make sure you have like a good about page that's descriptive and uses the keywords that describe your site. You're going to have like other information on other pages too. So in like, I know on some sites where are we? So you come to the home page and it was just like a bunch of images, and like, see, this one has like words, and it kind of, Google can really only read the words. So there's words here. It's saying what it's about. So if you don't really have a lot of words on your home page or your other pages, then Google doesn't really know how to find out where are we? Yeah. Anyway, so that's another thing. And then another thing is get backlinks. This is like one of the most important parts of SEO. And I think it's estimated that it's worth like the value or the weight of it is like over 50% of SEO in terms of Google's eyes. So that's huge. So if someone had like, whatever, 200 links to their site and you only had 20, and your sites were about the same things, Google's going to show their site above yours, because the links are showing that other websites think that your site is authoritative and trustworthy. Because of course you're not going to link to something spammy and like low quality, right? So basically Google's saying,
building backlinks is not necessarily an easy thing to
backlinks.
do, right?
Well, I think it actually is kind of easy. I think it's like, it's kind of, there are ways to make it complicated and ways to make it more simple. So we can talk about that in a bit.
Okay.
It's not hard, but it does require some work. But I have some tricks. Okay. So let's just skip over the on-page SEO, because yours is not really, this is more so for like people who are really targeting blogs as the way to bring in traffic. I think this is something that you could do in the future potentially, but from what we looked at, it's not.
So if we went to a specific, blog post, which I think I have like private practice essentials or HIPAA for dietitians or something like that. So, there are specific posts that I've used, but I think what you have there is important.
Oh, for sure. Like if it's important, if you're trying to make a blog post to help people find you on Google. If that's not your goal, then it's not as important to do these things. Like you want to have different headings. You want to make sure it's formatted well. So it's not just like a big giant paragraph. It's not like, I don't know, tiny font. And like another thing, like you want to include images, and are the images the right size? Do they have an alt text and descriptive name? Did you include your keyword? I know when I was coaching some of the dietitians, they're like, oh yeah, I targeted this keyword for the post. And then I would read the post and the keyword was not even included in the post. And I was like, oh, I think Google will not know that you're targeting that keyword if you don't use it. So you need to make sure that the keyword is included in your post, stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's a little bit easier to review on your own. Okay, off-page SEO. That's like my favorite one. So this is,
I feel like there's a lot of focus on kind of that on-page SEO, like how to format your blog post. And I think some of this other stuff we're talking about can actually feel a little bit murkier. We have a really great episode on keyword research that Laura Clevenger did that honestly totally changed. Like, I was able to start getting things on the first page after just honestly. She's like, most people do it so poorly. There's so much opportunity for dietitians that
I
honestly,
know.
I was like,
There's so much
oh,
opportunity.
that wasn't, I don't want to say that wasn't that hard. It is hard, but all this other stuff that you're talking about, the techie off page and all this kind of stuff, I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't know anything about this stuff. So
Yeah,
definitely
but it's the
enjoying.
kind of foundational stuff, like how to set up your
Right.
website properly.
Correct.
So once it's done, then it's kind of done.
Yeah.
Unless you did a total major rebrand, then obviously you'd want to like maybe redo your formatting and double check it. But so the off-page SEO, this is the stuff like backlinks. So we're going to see domain authority. Basically, what that is um, it's kind of like a measure of the strength of your website in comparison to other sites. So like remember when I was saying like if one site has 200 backlinks and your site only has 20, theirs is going to be stronger than yours and show up more. So
Right.
let's just look up yours.
Okay, and we're on a site called moz.com.
Yes. And I link it there.
Okay.
In the checklist, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you have a domain authority 22. And so the domain authority goes from between 0 and 100. It's kind of logarithmic. So as you get up, it's harder to like move up. So 22 is all right. It's definitely going to help you. And let's see, this is kind of showing which pages have links. So that's good. You have links to multiple pages on your site. Lots of times people get a lot of links to their homepage, which is good, but it's better if you have, actually, I shouldn't say it's better. It's important to have links to other pages on your site too, because it just helps make it look more balanced kind of.
Okay.
So these are some of the websites that link to you. And then this is some of their domain authority. So it's important to have websites from high domains
Got it.
linking to you. Because if it's like a website that so yours is 22, if a website with a domain authority 10 links to you, it doesn't really help you that much. So it's best if you can find ones that are higher than you. Okay, so there's probably other information, but that's basically all I wanted to look at is the domain authority. And this is a good thing to track over time because it goes up and down. Hopefully it's going up if you're building backlinks and making sure that, or like making improvements on your site, but sometimes it goes down with different, like they do like updates of their algorithm and stuff like that. So
Interesting.
It's just a good measure of the overall strength of your site. Okay. So one last thing I want to look at is backlinks. So we saw a few. For you to look at your own for free, you can go on Google Search Console. So I highly recommend signing up for that. It's totally free. It tells you tons of information about your website, including all the backlinks that have linked to you, all the keywords that you're already ranking for. Tons of good information, but I cannot see your website on Google Search Console. It's a private thing. So I'm just going to use this third-party website that I have through my other job. So these are referring domains. These are like the websites that are linking to you. Yeah. So this is hrefs.com. It costs like $100 a month or something like that. So you do not need this, but it is a handy tool.
Okay.
So just ignore all this other stuff. It's not the most important, but we're just going to look at the website and their domain authority. So this one uses DR, but it's the same thing basically. So Podbay, so it looks like you were on a podcast somewhere. You got some nice high domain authority links.
Oh, that's some good points about you don't think about being a podcast guest, like the value of that. Cool.
Yeah, because you usually get, I think, actually, I'm not 100% sure, but I think you always get a backlink from being on a podcast. So you would get one from the podcast website, I believe, and also from the host website, usually if they do show notes. So that's really important.
Okay.
Or I would say that's like a medium way to get backlinks. Like it's not too hard to be on a podcast, right? Especially if you're an expert in your like specific niche. So you have healthybites.co. I think that's probably somebody's website, right? So we can.
Oh yeah, Healthy Bites is they do like credentialing and.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Okay, so then I'm just looking here. This is the article that you're linked from. Okay. Some of the ones that link to you are going to be like random, like
Right.
like
Like I've never heard of it before.
SEOnumbers.com, and they're just like weird. You didn't do anything. It's just
Okay.
there. So
Okay.
just ignore those ones. So this one looks like someone's personal website. I bet she has a
Hmm.
store on your site.
I know who she
Yeah.
is. Jeanette Kins.
Yeah. So she linked to you
And I know
because
other
you
people
have
like
this
Jackie
store, right?
Nugent. I know who she is. Yep.
Yeah. So
Some of these are not particularly surprising to me, right?
yeah. So a lot of
Yeah.
your links, it looks like, are from
Yep.
people who have stores on your site. So that's good for you.
Hmm.
One thing, okay, so you're interviewed on what RDs do. That's great. That's a great one to do. It's totally free to be interviewed. You just have to like fill out her form, and
Hmm.
she has a domain authority 25, which
It's
is
great.
pretty good.
Hmm.
So yeah. Anyway, so that's kind of what you'll see when
Awesome.
you look in Google Search Console. It doesn't show all this other information, which you don't really need, but it shows you the website that's linking to you and the exact URL that's linking from, like if it's from a specific blog post
Hmm.
or whatever. So yeah, I think if that's pretty much all we really need to go over, like this kind of stuff is going to be your private information.
Right.
And traffic you can see in Google Analytics. That's very important to have installed on your website, because there's other analytics. Like I know my other job, their website is on Shopify,
Right.
Shopify Analytics, and like Jetpack, I think is
Hmm.
one that you can get on WordPress. Anyway, those analytics are not accurate. So you want Google Analytics, which is it
Right.
makes sense because most of your traffic is coming from Google. So they're going to know exactly
Yeah, if
what
you
you're.
have the, Pixel installed, right? Or not the Pixel, I'm
Mhm.
sorry. You have your tracking code on
Yes.
Facebook. If you have the tracking code installed on your website, I'm not going to like go off on a major tangent, but I'm actually leaning towards moving away from Google Analytics and looking at a more privacy focused analytics tool rather than giving I wish people wouldn't give my information away for free, and we get access to all this free information, right? Because we have no privacy over browsing. So kind of a cool tool if I'm trying to expand across the globe. There's a lot of increasing focus on privacy for people,
Yeah.
and
I
companies
mean,
are
Google
being
knows,
rewarded for privacy as well.
yeah, Google
So
knows who's going to your site already, because they're,
correct,
for the most part,
correct,
coming from
correct.
Google. But
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. So because
if,
we give them lots of information too about. So,
yes.
but you're right, like getting Google Analytics, you have to have it installed, right? If you want page level,
Yeah,
detail. And yeah,
it's going to show you a lot of information. So,
right.
um,
And if you
and
connect
like,
it from a commerce standpoint, which I do, you can also get really deep data about, products that you have. So whether or not you're using, I use a WordPress plugin. I'm not sure what the resources are from like Shopify, or if you're using Gumroad, or how you're selling, but you can kind of see, products. You can see where people, where they came and where they went
yeah, which
from
is super
certain
important for
products.
something like your
Hmm.
website for sure.
Yeah. So I guess, if we do you want to show anything else on there? We can kind of pop back out of the screen share.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything else. I don't know if anyone has any specific questions,
Yeah, well,
but I also do like these kind of audits for people, because I know sometimes when you're looking at your own site,
right.
it's hard to know. Um, well, I wrote this, like it sounds good, but it's hard to
Right.
see it from a different perspective.
Hmm.
So this is kind of what I do, but I go a little bit more in depth into like specific pages. So I might go to like holiday and then see
Think what's there.
what's coming up and like
Hmm.
any ways to improve that and stuff like that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I will pop out of the screen share and we'll
I will attempt to go back.
go.
Awesome. So I think in my just watching you, I feel like it was like, okay, yeah, I've got this. And as we go through the checklist, it starts to feel like, okay, this is a lot. But I think what you said at the
Mhm.
outset of starting, you know, you don't have to finish an entire checklist. Okay, type A, right? Dietitians, we want to finish everything. That going through a couple of items and then informing yourself, trying to make that significant improvement, because it isn't a learn everything that I can about this topic and then start applying. Like, what are
Yes.
learning about images, right? Because image loading impacts a lot of different areas of your site. If you're working on, blogging in a way that, you're targeting specific keywords, but the whole rest of your website loads really poorly, you don't have some of these other things, you're really hurting yourself, right, in the long run, because some of, these things just aren't, taken care of. So I can see on my own site, like, I'm going to put images from a site speed standpoint, kind of higher on my priority list. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
honestly not going to feel too bad about ignoring some of the rest, because there's no possible way to do everything all at one time, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Google might even find it weird if suddenly everything was changing,
Mm,
which I don't know if that's totally true, but you know what I mean? Like if all of a sudden everything had new keywords and like stuff like that, it's kind of like a bit suspicious to them. They're like, what's
right.
going on here?
Someone said that's too much changing, right?
Yeah.
It's actually really interesting. Well, I like the checklist, the way that you set it up, so that you can kind of go through those four pillars. So your site-wide SEO, which you have, your keywords, like what are you trying, what is it that you want Google to serve you up for? What are the keywords and the categories
Hmm.
you want to be found for? And really looking at, how you can better create content around those. Then your on page, and of course you mentioned your off page, SEO, and really starting to, evaluate your site and what you want to focus on. So,
Totally.
what resources, I guess, do you recommend? You showed a few of them. You showed like Moz. I've used Uber Suggest before. Keywords Everywhere isn't free anymore, but it's pennies to use it. It's not
Hmm.
particularly expensive to get keyword data. Beyond that, you have a lot of links within your checklist. So those are kind of your best bets.
Hmm. For sure. For those things. And I would definitely recommend HARO. So that's it's
Right.
called Help a Reporter Out,
Mm-hmm.
or that's what it stands for.
Right.
And basically, it's like an email list, and it connects journalists to sources. So we're a source of information about nutrition,
Right.
and so that's the easiest way to get backlinks, in my opinion,
Okay.
um, and my experience as well. So I brought my domain authority from 0 to over 30 in like 6 months, which is
Wow.
pretty good, but I wasn't working very hard on it. Like I spent like between sometimes I didn't do anything in a week, and sometimes I spent like 1 to 3 hours doing this. So it's not like a huge time suck. It's also pretty simple. You basically just answer their question, send them a quick email. Sometimes it's like 150 words about whatever their question is.
And then they'll
And
link to you.
yeah,
Got
yeah.
it.
So it's a pretty easy way to get links, and especially links from like pretty big sites. Like I got links from Huffington Post, Reader's Digest, stuff like that, that you wouldn't really normally have the chance to get links from otherwise. So definitely recommend signing up for HARO. I'm
Yes.
also like I'm almost finished this resource about getting backlinks. So if that's one of the
Ooh,
tactics that you're interested in learning, that's going to be up in my RD to RD store right away.
awesome.
Um, also have a couple other resources in there that you can check out. There's another freebie. If all of this was like way too much, there's another freebie about just like SEO 101, like what is a backlink, and like just kind of explaining it in a simple way, and like how does SEO relate to dietitians
Oh, that's nice. So a couple
specifically.
of questions came in. Um, we already discussed maybe, but we didn't. Corin here. How important is it to use, or if you go on page, I guess, SEO H1 and H2, etc. Like how important it is to have that structure within your blog post, I guess,
I would say that's
or
pretty
pages.
important. It's not like H1 is supposed to be your title, and then H2, 3, 4 would be anything else in there. I would definitely use them instead of just making the font bigger, because that's one thing that Google looks at to see what is this page about. So if you have just like a bigger font as your heading, Google doesn't really know that that's the heading necessarily. So make sure you
Mm-hmm.
just select the format. It doesn't have to be like a specific format. Like it doesn't have to be like H2, H3, 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 H2, H3, it doesn't have to
Okay.
be like that. So you can, but I generally wouldn't put it like really random. Like generally you would put H2 as like the main subheading and then other headers in between there, or you can have multiple H2s throughout. Whatever looks better for formatting, but you definitely want to use those. Yes.
Got it.
And put your keyword in some of those as well.
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely. I think, let me see here. We're super close on time, but I don't know if I can actually do this, but let me see. I think you could probably even show on your own website an example post that would be set up that way. I'm not sure if I share my screen, what will happen here. But you mentioned, let me go back here. You mentioned, is anybody hopefully seeing my screen? That would be a goal.
I can see it.
Oh, you can. Okay,
hopefully
good.
Everyone else can.
I don't know. We'll see. I'll check over here on Google, or not Google, on I can't tell yet, but this sensory food aversion, and I think targeting keywords, like you mentioned on my RD2RD site, my blog post wasn't really targeted at any specific keyword, but here, like, I'm very much so targeting the keyword sensory food aversion, right?
Yes.
Like looking
and
at
it's in
that.
your URL.
It's
So
in my
great.
URL. And then you were mentioning things like using it in your, like, this is a header, right? What is sensory food aversion? And then I'm also ranking for just plain food aversion, right? So again, using that again, sensory aversion, like it's throughout the post numerous times.
Yeah,
Right?
but in a
children.
natural way. Like it's not like stuffed in there that it's so awkward to read.
Correct.
It's just explaining what it is and like how to like deal with it and stuff.
Helping, children with sensory. And then things like food chaining and summary. But like this post alone, ranks in the top 2 or 3 on this topic, thousands and thousands of like visitors every single month on just one post. When I first targeted this keyword, it was like 500 visits a month was like the most search term, but it's so related that then you can go back and say, oh, well, I was targeting sensory food aversion, but food aversion or sensory processing food, like starting to see what other terms you started to pick up, and should I write another post, or how do I start to pick up on that additional traffic around as they click to different, other blog posts that I have throughout on this topic. And this is actually a Squarespace website, not a WordPress website. So I know I hear a lot of people who say you have to have, WordPress, and I blog on both, and was curious before we wrap up what your thoughts are on Squarespace versus, does it have to be WordPress or?
I think it doesn't have to be WordPress, but I think people recommend WordPress because it just has so many more options. Like Squarespace is like, I've never used it, so I don't know exactly how it is, but there's a lot fewer plugins that you can have. So like say for if you wanted to do a membership site or like
there aren't
e-commerce, like you can't do stuff like that. And I'm not sure about Squarespace specifically, but I know some other website builder sites, you don't own your own website, if that makes sense. Right. So if Squarespace or whatever, Wix or whatever, just shut down, your website's gone. Whereas if you are self-hosted with WordPress.org, you can just take a backup and just sign up with a new host and just put up your website right away. So that's one other reason why I think people do recommend WordPress.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So I thought I would just show it like on an actual like blog post if we were talking about on page.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. And that's perfect example of like why SEO is so important. Because what if you're just sharing that on like your Facebook page and you say you have even 10,000 people following your Facebook page, it's the same 10,000 people and you can't share it every day. Whereas like if there's thousands of people searching it per month, this is all new people coming to your site that are like new leads.
Right. And I
That's
think
powerful.
I'll link to that other where we talked more about keyword research, but
Mhm.
what to, write about it was looking at sensory food aversion. Google tells you what people are searching for, like what is it? Like how do I, and just basically putting those as like my sub
Mhm.
cat, like mapping out your blog post because Google already tells you what related search terms for that. It's right there. All you then have to do is write the blog post, right?
Yeah, see, it's exciting.
Right? You're like,
SEO is
what should
cool.
I
It's
write
fun.
about? Well, what are people looking
Yeah.
for? Because ultimately, you want to be ranking for the search term. So
Yes.
I think, like you said at the outset, that we were highly qualified nutrition professionals, right? And people are out there searching all of the time, and we spend a lot of time on. I think you have social media, you have SEO, and there's like this pull of where do I spend my time, and what do I do? What's really interesting, like even on this, um, Squarespace site where, I don't do anything really on social media, almost nothing, but every single day, like my email list grows. People are opting in, people are scheduling, discovery calls with me, even though I'm like, I'm not gonna see clients anymore. I'm like, another person like booked with me. SEO is super powerful, right? If you can target the right
Totally.
keywords. Like I don't post anything on social media. People are on Google searching and they will find
Yeah.
you.
It's like
Um,
the 80/20 rule. I feel
right.
like SEO is that.
It's
It
kind of cool.
takes a while to build up,
Hmm.
but once you get there, it's so self-sustaining. Like I took off 3 weeks over Christmas. I literally didn't do anything to my site and I still got thousands of people to my site.
Woo! It's
So
awesome.
imagine if you just stop posting to your
Right.
social channels, right? It would just
Right.
drop off
Do you call it like the
immediately.
hamster mill of social media? I feel like it
Yeah.
is sometimes. I don't begin to say I'm an expert on, like digital marketing of anything, but it's interesting how I run, if I was running two businesses, I felt like I was doing things very differently. One, I was like,
Hmm.
let's just put out some blog posts and let those do their thing. And then with RD to RD, I'm like on social media and doing all these things, and it's exhausting and it's time consuming. The other one, it's kind of like the slow cooker variety. You just stick it in
Hmm.
there, come back 2 weeks later. It's just interesting. So thank you
Totally.
everyone for tuning in today. Um, and this was really fun. Bri, thank you for being our guest today. And if you have questions, I'll definitely link to some of those things and in the comments for today.
Yeah. Thanks so
Anything
much for
else
having me.
closing up?
Hope
People,
it was interesting going through the site.
yeah, I found it really interesting. I have a lot to work on, that's for sure.
Oh, don't we all?
Yeah.
Even me. Like if you go to my website and you might be like, oh, she says do this, but she doesn't have that. Well, I'm not perfect and I don't have unlimited time either. So
No, it's
it doesn't, you don't have
incremental.
to, exactly, you don't have to be like perfect about it. Um, you can be type B. You don't have to be
Don't
a
have to be type
perfectionist
A
about it.
to do SEO well. Super fun.
Yes,
Well, thank you for being here as our guest on the live show, and I will make sure that people can grab your checklist. It's linked in the comments and can get started. Checking things out and taking just little bites. I think that was really great advice that you gave.
for sure.
All right. Thanks, Bree.
Have a
Go
good
to,
day.
yeah, if you want to, Bree's got a page dedicated to SEO for dietitians. So that's linked in our event details. So you can go ahead and visit that if you'd like to find out more.
Perfect.
All right. Thanks.